Have you ever wondered whether the problems in the world today would exist if we had deeper connection to ourselves, others, and the environment, and acted from that place?
Welcome to the Conscious Action Podcast with your hosts Brian Berneman and Kayla Greenville, who believe that connection is the key to taking conscious action as individuals and creating a better world.
We are here to raise awareness and inspire meaningful action by sharing stories, knowledge, and conversations with thought leaders and changemakers.
From sustainability to well-being and everything related to conscious living, our mission is to empower you to be the change that you want to see in the world. Welcome everyone to a new episode of the Conscious Action Podcast. I am Brian Berneman, your host, and I have the pleasure to be joined all the way from California in the US by Jean Ang. Thank you, Jean, so much for taking the time to be here. I am really excited about this conversation. And just before I give it to you, the space to you to introduce yourself and to share a little bit more about yourself, I want to say that the reason why I got in contact with Jean is that my mom has been following you for quite a while. She listens to all of the Arcturian transmissions, and it was something that when I went to visit her in the summertime, we were doing a lot of that, and she's like, you should just ask Jean to come into the podcast. And I'm like, well, here it is. So thank you, Jean, for being here. And so for everyone that is listening and potentially doesn't know you, can you share a little bit about yourself?
Thanks so much for inviting me first on the podcast, the Conscious Action Podcast, and the community here. It's great to be. Yeah, I've like you're mentioning, have been in energy healing now close to maybe 14 years, formally, sort of in a more professional role. And before that, I was in neuroscience at Yale, and I did my graduate work and postdoc there. And so that's sort of an interesting twist. I was very much in the molecular sciences, but was always interested in spirituality, or had that kind of deep, more, I guess, soul connection to that path ever since probably high school. But I was pursuing a more health, allopathic medical degree, and then kind of veered more towards the research end. But I was always fascinated by consciousness. And I think that's why I chose neurobiology as a way to kind of bridge the gap between regular science and sort of this aspect of consciousness, which I always had a direct experience of. And then around when I finished my postdoctoral fellowship, that's when I had an opportunity to start working directly with energy healers. And the first one was Vladimir Maximov, who is from Russia. But I can kind of sort of talk more about that if there's interest. But just to make that kind of long story a little bit short, eventually really got into what you were mentioning, the Arcturian Healing Method, which was just a synthesis of different modalities that I had studied, and a connection to spiritual beings who are called the Arcturians, which is a type of, you could call like angelic consciousness or spiritual consciousness that's compassionate and here to help the planet. They're non-physical beings, so it's sort of a different paradigm than like the scientific one. But it's been fascinating, and hopefully people have been feeling that, energetically, and that it's been helping assist people here on the planet.
Beautiful. It's so interesting because there's I see this, and I've been seeing it through my lifetime here, that there's much more openness from both a consciousness perspective and being able to tap into these different energies, into these different dimensions, into different perspectives of seeing life. And as well, there's a lot more openness to this not being such a weird thing. There's, I know, because I work a lot with different energies and with energy healing. And I know this a lot of times for some people that have never done this, that have never, believed in all of these spiritual consciousness perspectives, until the moment that someone has a direct experience. Sometimes it's hard for that to be allowed. And I see that shift that is happening. I see that there's more people open to it. And I know that for me, when I was a teenager, that I was introduced to energy healing, and I started with Reiki, and I started with a few different healing modalities. And suddenly it's like, oh, and I think that you have also done this with the reconnection, and there's a lot of different ways that I was experiencing all of this. And I'm like, well, this is real because I'm experiencing it.
Mm.
And and I wonder if you can talk a little bit more from your life and from your perspective on when you work with people, how do you see this happening now that you've been working with this for this last 15 years? Like, have you seen this shift happening?
Hmm. Yeah, it's a great point, and I think a lot of people here, have been experiencing energy work and are open, like you said, to that, I guess, level of reality or perception of reality. And I kind of think about like the Buddhist idea of interdependence. Like of course I was interested, but I think I was able to do that full time, kind of take a step out of the traditional health path, which was more, I guess, the scientific allopathic, because there was also people who would, be clients or be interested in coming. So I think that was really important. And that was actually back in about 2008 to 2012 was when I was just starting. So I think there's this interdependence between, people, there's like people who are interested and might facilitate the energy work, and then those who are receptive, and then who also end up being also facilitators. So I think that that's a reflection of the whole shift on the planet. Particularly, I mentioned like clients, because when things can shift into the economic aspect, then that really shows a type of because we're an economic a culture pretty much on the planet, then that shows a certain level of like dispersal onto the consciousness plane.
Mm, yes.
Whereas maybe in past lives or even past eras, it was most of this was probably kept within certain small groups, esoteric groups.
Yes, yes, definitely. And before we get Jean, into some of these different tools, traditions, and perspectives, how do you see and how has it been for you to integrate and to be able to allow the coexistence of this, scientific, allopathic, medical, mainstream medical tradition with all of these more energetic, esoteric consciousness traditions?
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I think it is somewhat like a possibly a dichotomy or a paradox, and I think the way I bridged it was less intellectual and more, I guess, spiritual, in the sense that most of the practice and most of what I have been doing was we might call it intuitive, or what I now see was connected, meaning I was always tuned in to what I think the spiritual world was trying to show me, rather than like an intellectual, maybe even a scientific, or my previous sort of life approach in the sciences would be you kind of gather enough data and create a plan based on that data, and then move forward like a deductive reasoning. Whereas here it's more intuitive. It's almost like direct knowledge that you're connecting to like a spiritual source, and they kind of guide you. It could be your higher self, could be a deeper aspect of myself, although I might conceive of it as other conscious beings. They kind of direct the next step. And so the whole thing has been like that since the beginning.
Mm,
So Yeah, so that's a very different paradigm than the one that maybe the intellectual paradigm that I came out of.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know, a lot of times, and I know this, like I did my postgrad in neuroscience as well. And
Mm,
there's, when I'm teaching at university or when I'm running workshops and working with people, sometimes, there's some skepticism, of course, with a lot of people. One of the things that I try to bridge that gap is by bringing it back to this way of having that direct experience, or just showing different types of experiences from a different lens, to be
mm,
able to see things slightly different, to allow the possibility for something to be there that might be unseen by our eyes most
mm,
times, yet it is there. Like, I know from my experience, like I remember the first time ever that I went to learn Reiki, and suddenly it's like I have my hands together, and suddenly it's like boom, this energy that it's like, well, that's there, and started to experience all of these things, and it's like, well, my eyes didn't see that, my body felt that, my hands felt that. It's just like I'm using Wi-Fi, and I cannot see the Wi-Fi, and I still can
right,
use it.
right.
Mm.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
So
Yeah, that's amazing.
yeah, I wanted to ask you, Shin, you mentioned earlier about in your own path. What are the tools and the journey that you have like taken and learned all of these different techniques that led you to where you are now?
Hmm. Yeah, so just to maybe unpack that a bit, I mentioned the first teacher I had was actually from Siberia, in Russia. He was in Brighton Beach at the time, so I was going like into Brooklyn, kind of training one-on-one, a little bit like a mentorship. And that was a very powerful experience. Then I learned a number of modalities, one that you've mentioned, but that were kind of more trademark modalities that are present. They're still out there that kind of trained me in starting from the basics, but more it was all these different experiences that you're mentioning directly that I kind of needed, also if coming from a very scientific and maybe even less experienced background than you had mentioned in your own history. So I studied pranic healing, which was studied by Master Chokoku Sui, and that kind of gave me the basics for like the chakra system. And then the reconnection was quite powerful and profound, particularly with connecting with this star consciousness, which many people who might be familiar with the Arcturians or Pleiadians or Andromedans, this type of uh, consciousness and energy that are linked to different star consciousness. The reconnection by Eric Pearl has a Pleiadian background. And there was a process called the reconnection, which was a DNA activation, and I think that really gave me the experiences, like you're saying, to open up my consciousness to other dimensional realities. And even this idea, I don't know if UFO is the best term, but more like extraterrestrial phenomena, or that has been actually a big part of a lot of the retreats that I've had in different sacred sites. Like I do have one in the background in Peru. But these power sites, they definitely are places where, but a lot of different sightings of interdimensional contact can occur.
Mm.
But maybe I'll pause there. I mean, that's kind of maybe like half of the training.
Yeah.
But
And so how did you um, connect with the Arcturian, like after doing that, did you connect it with the Arcturian energy and started to channel that?
oh yeah. So the kind of the second half of the training, I guess, that organically happened was I studied with Stephen Greer, which maybe some people know. He actually has extraterrestrial contact protocols, and he goes to these sacred sites. So ever since he was young, he had sightings and been in contact. But he also was trained in science. He became an emergency medical doctor, and but also a meditation teacher. And then in his history, because he had these sightings, he created protocols that were very like logical, but were consciousness based, kind of marrying the science and the meditation together. And so, like, I went to Mount Shasta, Joshua Tree, to do trainings with him. And you go out to the night sky and you see these phenomenal things. Like, that's the thing about the direct experience. Like, you don't have to read about it. That's kind of his MO, is that rather than have governments, either deny or say there are, some type of ET phenomena, you could just go out and have your own experience, and then for yourself. So then that was about 2009, and then every year I held a retreat at Mount Shasta, and so we've had a lot of connections. And the reason I bring that up is, in terms of the Arcturian work, is when you're out there it's like doing a meditation at night and then watching the night sky, and you see these different light phenomena, not like metalcraft, but more like light, interdimensional light phenomena, definitely with the five physical senses, as well as clairvoyant sight. You actually get transmissions from that. You get like energy downloads, even stronger than what can be done maybe one-on-one. And that really opened up my consciousness, or it can open up people's consciousness and clairvoyance and different abilities, depending on kind of their karma or what their service is. But I think that helped me to make the connection with the Arcturians. And then, just to make this kind of make it a little shorter, I did a fairly in-depth training with the Foundation for Shamanic Studies, which, in shamanism, you work with helping spirits. So I kind of see the Arcturians like a shamanic practitioner might see helping spirits. So I use shamanic journeying to make that consciousness link to the Arcturians.
Beautiful. And it's interesting that you shared about all of these sites and all of these sightings as well. Like I've had through the years, and in like seeing both in the moment and as well a lot through like photos and videos, seeing all of those manifestations in that orbs, in that sacred geometry forms, and being able to see that, especially when being on retreat and doing specific practices, and then like see the photos, and it's like all of these different orbs and all of these different sacred geometries, and it's like, wow, that like that what I was feeling, I can see it there. And I think that is, as you're saying, that direct experience is so important, because like I remember one of my teachers once said that this is back when like when you did like shoot the photos with like a film, and you had to go and take it somewhere to be developed. And this, like, the person that developed, he's like, oh, sorry, I don't know what happened, but it's all with dots and stuff like that. And she's like, I don't know, that's good, those are the orbs.
Right.
So it's always really interesting, with all of these spaces, and having those experiences about that. And I think that what you're saying, and this is one of the things that I talk a lot with people. I use a lot of energy healing and sound healing, and a lot of times I say this is about aligning and opening to a certain frequency, to a certain energy. And from my perspective, and this is what I use in my own practice, is all of those energies are there, available, and we just need to open, invite them, and attune to that, and then we can allow it to come through. So I wonder, Shane, at this moment, if you would be open to, and then we can continue to talk a little bit more. If you would be open, if there's a transmission from the Arcturians that is coming through, to share that with all of us.
Oh yeah. We can do the energy transmissions. Many people maybe listening are familiar with this, and you could just relax, like you're receiving an energy healing. If it's new, then you just be aware, and of course, you don't have to be there in real time because the energy works beyond space time. And so the intention is if you're listening to this or watching it, that you're included in the energy at whatever point in time you're listening. And we'll run like 2 or 3 or more what I call Arcturian Healing Method frequencies. These are just frequencies from the Arcturians, like what Brian mentioned, that I just have kind of labeled or been open to. So I have something to reference them with. Okay. Yeah. So we're starting. So we're starting with something called the Arcturian time collapsing healing frequency. This just helps us to collapse time by learning our soul lessons efficiently. And usually I'm silent as the energies are coming through. And then every so often you'll hear my voice when we switch over to another or a new frequency. We're continuing to experience the Arcturian time collapsing healing frequency. Now we're switching to something called the Arcturian divine fire healing frequency. And this combines the consciousness of both the Arcturians as well as the Christ consciousness or solar logos, the universal being. If you had any specific healing intention or manifestation intention, you can just state it silently that the energies work to manifest that healing at its own divine timing or that goal. Then just be open and aware. And now we're channeling something called the Arcturian fire frequencies, which is more the Arcturians and the fire element. We're healing with the element of fire. Particularly if you need to burn or dissolve any old patterns. It could be a disease or illness, an emotional pattern. This is a good frequency to do that. Or even a mental or stuck state. Yeah, and that completes the short but intense healing session. And when you feel comfortable, you can open your eyes and snap your fingers.
Beautiful. Thank you, Jim, for sharing that, and hopefully everyone that is listening and is watching this, you can feel it. One of the things that I always say with stuff like this, make sure that, like if you're doing this, if you're driving, don't close your eyes, stop. Like just take the time to do it. And as Jim was just saying as well, that this works outside of time and space. So, you can receive this at any time. You can go back to this moment and to be open to it again if needed. And I wanted to explore this a little bit more with you, Jane, that is this concept that how do you explain to people this fact that we live in this what seems to be linear time with space, and the fact that at the same time we are living in this consciousness that is not bound by time and space?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, it's a good question. Yeah, I kind of used like a multi-dimensional model. So just that there are multiple dimensions, and the one I usually use is like a seven-dimensional model of, let's say, reality. And obviously the physical dimension, the one that we're aware of through our senses, is bound by space and time. Of course, our physics talks a lot about that. And then in this multidimensional model, the idea is that within this space and time reality, there's other levels of reality that are non-physical, or you could say there maybe even have particles another way, but they're beating at a different frequency. And so this idea, like you mentioned earlier, when you can, they're all present, these frequencies, but when you can tune your consciousness so that you're kind of in alignment with those other frequencies, then they become almost as real as this physical world. We're sort of more kind of impacted into the physical. Our consciousness is very much tuned in here because we have a physical vehicle. But many people who've maybe trained or had past life experiences or training now, they've trained their consciousness to do like out of body work or the shamanic journeying. So they sort of have tuned their consciousness, maybe with the help of like rhythmic drumming or something, to shift their consciousness to other planes of reality. So just to finish those, and then I can see maybe we'll unpack that. But the other dimensions in the seven planes of nature that are non-physical would be what's called the etheric. Maybe people are familiar with that. That's like the chi or prana body, the prana dimension. Then the emotional dimension, the mental dimension. Sometimes that's together called the astral world, which maybe like when we're in the dream state, we're in our astral body or out of body travel. Then the higher dimensional planes in this model are called the causal, the karmic plane, the spiritual, which is more like the soul or Akashic record plane, and then the divine. So people who study like non-dual traditions, the divine is where you're unified with all of consciousness, or there's no subject-object dichotomy in your consciousness.
Yes. And one of the interesting things, and this is something that I am fascinated about, is holding myself open to all of these different dimensions and these different realms all at once. Because as you're saying, they all exist, and it's about me attuning myself to this and how to live my life from this perspective, how to not be so sometimes caught up with something that like happened here, because I can widen my perspective, and it's like, oh well, like from this other perspective, perhaps that's it. Like I remember like many years ago that I had this experience, and I went to one of my teachers, and I told her, and I was like, this was so synchronistic, because I could tell. And she was like, well, like in a sense, every experience is a synchronicity. It's just about changing the way that we're looking at it, because a lot of times, she was sharing, that someone someday can be late to a place because of whatever, and it's like, well, was there someone there supporting you to make that happen? Because something was about to happen if you didn't, like if you went on time. So just changing perspectives of how to be and how to see things. When you're working with people, how do you incorporate this into that practice?
Yeah, I think that's a beautiful way of looking at life. And then every moment is like a miracle, the way you describe it, the way kind of transmitting what your teacher mentioned to you. Like if we see every moment is actually, like a conglomeration of very unique causes and conditions, so that it's actually somewhat even planned divinely in many respects. And that's just our level of perception. So, in many respects, I like the Buddhist idea that everyone you're meeting, you probably have met before, if you believe in like past lives or millions of some encounters, maybe in this dimension or other dimension. So I think when doing healing, most likely, uh, one doesn't have to really believe in past lives, but every meeting is like a unique, special type of interaction where there's the chance to transmit and share energy and information. And it doesn't have to be probably if you're meeting physically, but even here we're kind of meeting, not me and you, okay, but many people who are listening, maybe even beyond space time, and maybe not at a personality level. I'm not able to know each person or they me, but we're exchanging probably on all those other dimensions as well as the physical energy and information that can be very beneficial to each of us, and maybe even not at the present moment, but might unpack much later. I
Mm.
found that to be the case.
Beautiful, beautiful. And I'm interested in going back a little bit to the Arcturian energy. If someone wants um to tap into that energy, if someone wants to if they resonate with the Arcturians as like star star beings or star family, um what would you share and recommend them to start to tap more into that energy?
Yeah, the name is actually enough. Like there's a word transmission with the word Arcturian. So I know it's probably the most simple, but the simple ones tend to be powerful. It's again like just the intention. I wouldn't say belief, because even if you didn't believe it, what you could do is, this is my suggestion, is in your meditation, or people who are experienced with healing who might not have healed with the Arcturian energies are wondering how, you just repeat the word Arcturian 3 times with the intention that you're connecting with them, because these beings are like many universal beings, or even all of us, are present on some level here in the here and now. And then for us to be aware of that, we just have to tune our consciousness with intention. So the word is the transmission. Just say the Arcturians 3 times, and then just allow the frequency to come through in whatever way you feel it. Like some people feel it come down their pillar, through the upper crown chakra. And then if you do healing, just let it come out of your hands. Or like when I did that transmission, I don't really even see it coming through me. It just kind of comes through the person through resonance, whoever's listening, or whoever I'm intending it to. Um, yeah, and they'll be present. They'll give you experiences to let you know that they're present.
Mm. And just, like for people that might believe, like, oh, I'm allowing other beings to, like to come into my field or into my body. What would you say about that?
Oh yeah, yeah. They won't impose themselves. Like you don't, and so you don't like if and you don't like what if you say the Arcturian. Like if you want to feel the energy, just say Arcturian 3 times. It doesn't mean they're gonna step into you. It just means a little bit like you turned on the channel to watch us. You kind of feel the when you watch a YouTube video, you kind of can feel the person's personality or presence. It's a little bit like turning on the Arcturian YouTube channel. So you can kind of just feel their presence. Whereas most times, maybe because we are in a very scientific materialist culture, of course, I grew up in that too. We don't even recognize non-physical realities. So they may be present. They're just kind of waiting for us to maybe say, "Oh yeah, okay, I'll take your chat. Like I'll take your text message."
Yes, and one of the things, and I think that from my own experience and some of my teachers is there's these benevolent energies and energy beings that are available for supporting our path, our journey, our ascension as humanity, as people of this earth, of consciousness. And as well, we have that, as you're saying, that complete autonomy to allow or not.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and yeah, they're very benevolent and respectful of one's free will and space, and they probably have because of universal consciousness. It's a little bit like people here are probably very sensitive. You kind of know when someone doesn't, let's say, isn't in the mood to talk, so so you won't like try to impose yourself on them. So even before you say anything, they will feel just like you might feel someone's field. They'll feel if you're ready to kind of connect or if not really. And so they'll just sort of, it's much like dolphins. I think if anyone swam with them, they kind of keep their distance until they really feel you're comfortable, and then they come close. It's like non-intellectual.
Yes. That was such a wonderful experience swimming with dolphins. I had this experience here in the South Island of New Zealand, swimming with dolphins, and like I at one point I decided when I was doing that, I was like, oh, what happens if I start? Of course, I was underwater, so I couldn't chant as I normally do, but I was like, what happens if I bring that vibration to my body? And some of the dolphins were coming near me, and I'm like, oh wow, this is such an incredible experience.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, and I know Jean as well. You're coming to New Zealand
Uh-huh.
soon. We are recording this. It's the beginning of August. What can you share about that journey that you're going to do here in New Zealand, and why here?
Uh-huh. Yeah. It's like a 13-day journey through New Zealand, connecting particularly with the ancestors, the Maori culture, different healers within that tradition, connecting kind of to the energies or spirits of the land, to kind of just learn from that. And I just felt kind of guided. Most of these trips, pretty much all of them are I try to just stay open to that spiritual connection, kind of the guidance. And there was just a very strong guidance to be present there. And like I have this background in Peru, and that maybe that was because I was just there. And so maybe there's in April, maybe there's a little bit of a linkage. Sometimes you go to one spot on the planet with a group and then another, and whether it's conscious or not, there's sort of like a connecting kind of bridge of energy and information. So yeah, so and maybe we're talking because a little bit like a welcome to New Zealand, just to be able to talk with you. Yeah, so there might be
Mm,
some synchronicity to that.
yeah, and which are the dates for anybody that is interested? Which are the dates of this journey?
Oh yes, the September 31st to October 13th. Yeah, and I think yep, yeah. If people are interested, like I'd have a newsletter. If people just go to arcturianhealingmethod.com and then just sign up for the newsletter, then that there's like a kind of an announcement on the trip.
Beautiful. And also for those that are resonating, perhaps like they cannot make it to this journey here in New Zealand, but they resonate with what you're doing and they resonate with the Arcturian energy. How can they work with you? How can they connect with you?
Oh yeah, I think a great free resource. Like I think there's like 100 now transmissions, that I posted is I also have a podcast. It's called Arcturian Healing Method Podcast. So if they just want to like listen and like if they like the short one we did there, here with you, and there's like a lot that they can choose from. I think that's a lot of people really have liked that from the feedback. And then, yeah, the Arcturian Healing Method, it's like on an all one word website. That's my main website that has
Beautiful.
posting. Yeah.
Beautiful. So yeah, like if someone like if you're listening to this or watching this and you resonate with what Jin is sharing, go and check it out and potentially, like do some work. It doesn't matter where you are in the world, because as we've been talking, this is all outside of space and outside of time as well. Like I do a lot of distant healings as well. So like for anybody listening, it doesn't matter where you are. If you resonate with Jin and what he's doing, then you can work with him. And before we start to bring this conversation towards an end, Jin, what are some of the things that you would wish that everybody in the world knew?
Yeah, I love that question. Yeah, that's a beautiful question. Um, yeah, that's I have to think about it a little bit. I think that that you're okay. I was in a culture of striving, and probably still am. Like with the academics and even in spirituality, I probably brought that along. Still kind of working through that pattern, but the striving to be better and better, and kind of, and there's a sort of a beingness that where the journey, it doesn't exactly stop, but that striving kind of slows down or stops, so you can kind of really enjoy the presence. I think ultimately that's kind of the message I would share, is enjoy the presence.
Mm. Beautiful. Yeah, enjoy the presence. You are enough. I mean, there's as you're saying, in this society, we've been conditioned in so many ways to believe that we are alone, even though we're never alone. But these like multidimensional beings are always there if we choose to include them. Like I always say, like I'm never alone. I'm always going places with my entourage. Like they are always there with me. um, and I think that, like knowing as well that, as you're saying, we've been conditioned to always seek for more and all of these different things, instead of doing that, and at the same time allowing ourselves to have that realization that we are enough. We are this, like consciousness being that is divine, that is, like so big, and is, like without beginning, without end. And to be able to change the lenses and the perspectives and the frequency from where we are looking life, and being able to see that from that other place, that's beautiful.
Oh yeah, yeah. I love that idea of the changing the frequency, the perceptual frequency
Mm.
of who we are.
Yes, beautiful. Is there any last few things, Jean, that you would like to share with everyone that is listening or watching?
Oh yeah. Well, first I wanted to thank you for inviting me to the this conversation, the podcast, and for being able just to connect with everyone, like we mentioned, through this media. I think this is the kind of the wave of the future, both just consciousness and energetically. You reach so many people around the globe, and also in different space-time realities. And I do think all of this and everyone's work, either individually or as a group, or through this podcast, through different resources, it's really making a difference on the planet and making the shift. And that's been my experience, is more and more people, like, without me really willfully trying, this kind of just being, are open, like you said, to energy work, to consciousness beings, and seems to just be happening on its own. But I think it's because of everyone contributing to that morphic field of awakening.
Mm. Beautiful, beautiful. And yes, thank you for taking the time, for being here. Thank you for everyone listening. As I mentioned before, if you're resonated with what we talked about, go and check out the website, go and check out the podcast, and try out a little bit more. If you're interested in work with Jin, work with him. If you're interested in this journey around New Zealand, go and check that out as well. And I would love to know what resonated with you. Leave us a comment, whatever it is that you're finding this podcast, this conversation, and as well let us know, what was that transmission like for you? Did you feel it? Did you experience anything? Just let us know what happened there. So Thank you once again, Jean, for taking the time. Yeah, hopefully I might see you around New Zealand soon.
Yeah, that would be great. Thanks so much.
Thank you. And thank you, everyone listening. And we'll see you in the next episode. Bye.
What did you like the most about this episode? Take a moment to think about what change you can make in your life today.
Share your conscious action on social media using #ConsciousAction and tagging @ConsciousActionNZ so we can celebrate your impact on the world and create a ripple effect.
One easy action we would love for you to take right now is to share, like, and subscribe to this podcast. This will help us get these messages out into the world and inspire more people to take conscious action in their own lives, contributing to the better world we hope for.